Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining me once again. So, I just got done watching the documentary called Behind the Curve. You can find it currently on Netflix, Amazon Prime, Google, pretty much anywhere documentaries are available. And this documentary is sweeping the mainstream by storm. I will say this. Reviews are needed of this documentary, but understand clearly that this documentary was not made for people who already have flat Earth as a belief system. Understand clearly that this was definitely a hit piece to a certain degree. However, there were moments in this documentary that literally brought me, a 29-year-old grown man, to tears. This movie also raised a lot of questions about some of the people inside of the Flat Earth community, those who have been there from the very beginning. Mark Sargent, Patricia Steer, ODD TV, Matt Powerland, Bob Odell, Jaron. And it's very clear where the people who filmed this documentary are coming from. They came from the psychological, social aspects of what this movement has created and how people perceive the Flat Earth movement from the outside. And it is very interesting who they managed to get for this documentary when it comes to refuting our beliefs in a flat Earth. For the first time, I have seen scientists and astronauts, physicists, actually address the flat Earth in somewhat of an open manner. However, they never touch any scientific data, they never touch any scientific proof, and in fact, they go out of their way to make Jaron Campanella look like an absolute fool. And I feel bad that he ended up having to be that person. And let's face it, it was going to be somebody. Volunteering to take part in this documentary, going into this, everybody had to be aware that their necks were on the chopping block. Everybody inside of our movement knew that the first documentary to gain mainstream momentum was not gonna be a celebration video for the flat Earth, right? So I also want to commend all of the people who I mentioned previously for putting themselves out there in such a way, because it's not easy. It's not easy by any means. So thank you for doing that, and I appreciate it immensely. I'm gonna start off by talking about the end of the documentary first, because it's fresh in my mind, and honestly, it's what pissed me off the most about this entire thing. So about halfway through the documentary, they start to introduce Jaron. And this was around the time where he was conducting his recreation of the Bedford Level experiment on a canal. And at the time, he had a laser, which he spent quite a bit of money on. And then he spent even more money modifying this laser. Now, the reason he had to modify this laser is because there was a refraction of the light coming off of the laser that would make it get bigger and bigger as it went down range. And this would distort the results of his experiment. He needed a narrow beam. So he went out of his way to find a mechanism that was supposed to make that beam smaller. However, this focusing device failed him. And it wasn't Jaron's fault. This device didn't do as advertised, and it led to a result in his experiment that was inconclusive either way. Now, what the documentary doesn't tell you is why the experiment went wrong. They never explain exactly what the experiment was trying to do. Anybody that watches this documentary who's not a flat earther isn't going to understand why this experiment failed that was covered in the documentary, okay? Now, let's be 100% honest with ourselves. That's 100% disingenuous. There's no way around that, right? So more or less, what they do is they set Jaren up to look like a crackpot who doesn't know what he's doing. And the time frame that Jaren was given in order to take part in this documentary did not allow Jaren to go out and test this experiment prior to the documentary crew showing up. And that right there is where the biggest mistake on his behalf was made. And I can understand exactly why that mistake was made. If I was in his position and I was offered a part in the first documentary that was going to go mainstream, I would definitely take advantage of that opportunity. And life is life. We have no idea what set of events led up to that experiment failing. So let's put ourselves in his position. And that's the easiest way to empathize with somebody. He got caught in between a rock and a hard place, man. And they ended up capitalizing on it. Another thing that made me very angry about this documentary was the fact that they seem to focus on every aspect of the flat earth that could possibly make us look disingenuous or crazy. For instance, they spend a good quarter of this documentary explaining the controversy between Matt Powerland, Mark Sargent, and Patricia Steere that took place shortly before the first convention. And what they do is they leave the open-ended question out there as to whether or not these two were actually plants from inside the government. And I find this extremely ironic, correct? They spend this entire documentary making us look like we're crazy, while at the same time postulating that Mark Sargent and Patricia Steere are inside plants from the CIA and the government, and they treat that as though it's credible to some degree, while at the same time completely dismissing any type of evidence that was offered during the entire documentary. Something else they did was put Bob Odell in a very interesting predicament, and they never gave us evidence to back up his point of view. Now, what they did is they point to the ring gyro experiments that these guys did that detected 15 degrees of precession, right? And basically, what Bob postulates is the gyroscope was actually picking up the movement of the ether and the heavenly bodies above us. Now, that is 100% plausible based on how a ring gyro works. However, the documentary crew never went into depth as to the mechanisms that make a ring gyro work, nor did they offer any scientific explanation that has prevalence when it comes to this argument, because there are other explanations other than the Earth rotating. They just happen to ignore all of them, okay? I will say this. There is moments in this documentary that will make people question the reality that they live in. They make it very clear that we as flat earthers, the majority of us, are not stupid. That was stated several times. However, they want to make it appear as though we are misguided, as though we are misinterpreting the evidence right in front of our face. And what I'm here to tell you is this is nothing more than projection. This is a classic obfuscation tactic in which people place their shortcomings onto that of their rival and then run from there. So, in the end, this documentary should be shared far and wide. Even though, yes, it is a hit piece to a certain degree, like I said, it made me, as a flat earther, break down into tears on more than one occasion. I'm not ashamed to admit that, because I literally started having an anxiety attack watching this documentary, because it hit me all at once, my Jerry Maguire moment, if you will. The Earth is flat. Like, I realized that a long time ago, and the implications of that were profound. But now I know, because I saw people on screen in a documentary that are 100% set in their conviction. For the same exact reasons I myself am solid in my convictions that the earth is flat. So yes, turn people on to this documentary. Leave it on in your house when you have company over. Get the word out there. There is no better tool right now. People inherently say that YouTube videos are a rabbit hole that doesn't lead anywhere. Well, what are they going to say when you introduce them to an award-winning documentary that premiered at over 20 film festivals worldwide and is critically acclaimed on Netflix right now? Take the time, share this video, but be warned, if you're a flat earther and you take the time to watch it, understand that it is propaganda and it is a hit piece. But we can use this to our advantage if we try to, and if we remain calm in this situation and realize this is only the first step. We've broken through the firewall that they had established. If they are being forced to release documentaries on Netflix talking about the flat earth, the 100th monkey has already awoken to the deception. Now it's time to move as fast as we can in the right direction. And that direction is speaking truth, no matter how it makes you look. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.